The carousel of coaches keeps spinning in the NFL, and with it come rumors that mixed strategy, cap space, and a touch of nostalgia. In Kansas City, the return of Eric Bieniemy rekindles past connections and raises a question that seemed settled. Could Tyreek Hill return to the Chiefs? At the same time, Buffalo is exploring ways to protect and maximize Josh Allen's prime, while Miami faces tough decisions regarding the future of Tua Tagovailoa.
Matt Nagy likely to land a head coaching gig somewhere else. That leaves that spot vacant, but not anymore. Former OC Eric Bieniemy will reassume the role of Reid's first mate. Familiarity for Bieniemy, who previously held that role from 2018 through 2022. Now, that's a non-play calling title, with Reid still pulling the strings, but the return catching the attention of many, including the Cheetah, Hill, contemplative in his response on X, quote, EB to the Chiefs. Hill, almost guaranteed to be a cut candidate by Miami as he rehabs that gruesome knee injury he suffered in Week 4. All right, fellas, you look at the Chiefs' receivers room right now and maybe some of the distractions, let's call it. Is Tyreek Hill a solution to a problem, or, John, are we just here on nostalgia's sake?
I think you absolutely call him and bring him in if it's at the right price. Remember, these two sides broke up. The Chiefs traded him away because he had an astronomical asking price, and the Dolphins were willing to give him that new contract after that trade was made. Now, if Kansas City wants him back, they can do it on their terms. And it's interesting to see how popular Eric Bieniemy is with these players, because it wasn't just Tyreek Hill. I mean, we saw Travis Kelce go out on Wednesday's episode of his podcast, and he sounded like he was ready to run through a brick wall for Eric Bieniemy. And obviously, he hasn't announced whether he's going to return this year or retire, but he sounded pretty excited about the possibility of playing for Bieniemy, and that's how you get with Tyreek Hill here. We're looking at his cap number here. He doesn't have any guaranteed money left in that contract, and as you said, Musso, it feels like an almost certainty that he is going to be released, and because he is recovering from that gruesome injury, it's hard to see him getting a high-end deal, so it feels like a one-year prove-it deal maybe in 2026, and I feel like Andy Reid would be thrilled to be able to get Tyreek Hill at a discount.
Yeah. What Tyreek Hill becomes the question then, because speed was the skill set that Tyreek built his route package around. I want to see what that physical and some of that speed looks like coming off that knee injury once again. A handful of openings remain, fellas. Could it be another reunion in Buffalo? Former OC and Giants head coach Brian Daboll interviewed Thursday. Dave's part of that group that refined a young Josh Allen skill set. Could he return to take Allen to that unreached height? Well, it makes sense. However, the Bills have already interviewed current OC Joe Brady. So if you get Daboll and Brady as your brain trust there working for Allen, it does get pretty interesting. None of that solves what I see as the glaring problem, that being personnel, but that's another man's job, and that man has job security. I digress. Will, is Daboll the man for this job?
The possible return of Tyreek Hill to the Chiefs makes sense only under very specific conditions. The talent is still there, but the big unknown is physical. Tyreek built his game around explosion and speed, and coming back from a serious knee injury completely changes that equation. Still, if Miami really opts for the cut and the price drops to a short, prove-it deal contract, Andy Reid would certainly listen attentively. The presence of Eric Bieniemy, someone extremely respected in the locker room, only reinforces this scenario. In Buffalo, the name of Brian Daboll comes up again as an attempt to reconnect Josh Allen to the period when his evolution was most evident. The problem is not the offense, it's the context. Firing Sean McDermott after consistent playoff years and replacing him with someone who had a very poor tenure as head coach with the Giants is a huge risk, both sporting and politically, with the fans. In Miami, the talk of evaluation sounds like something beyond the field. The new leadership knows that the decision about Tua is not only technical, but also financial and structural. The example of Denver shows that taking on a gigantic dead cap can hurt in the short term, but can accelerate a restart. The caution in the discourse indicates that all doors remain open, including the most painful one.
I kind of like like Daves for this job, right? I mean, you need somebody that you kind of I don't we don't know how Josh Allen feels about the firing of Sean McDermott, but you have to think if he truly wasn't consulted, that he feels a little bit betrayed. And I think you could win back some of that trust by bringing Dable back in here. And if we're being honest, look, of course, I mean the Giants were terrible with Brian Dable as the head coach. Now, they did go to the playoffs their first year, and he got the most out of Daniel Jones. I think you could kind of put a little bit more of that on personnel. Same sort of situation that happened with Sean McDermott in terms of a power play and the GM sticking around in New York. I thought Dable got the most out of Jackson Dart. I thought he got the most out of Daniel Jones and maybe made a poor decision to jump where he jumped, when he jumped, with whom he jumped. So, yeah, I like this move coming back to Buffalo. You're set up in a situation where Josh Allen will be happy. Maybe he calls plays, maybe he doesn't. But you're right. You got to solve the defense, and that comes down to Brandon Beane, which is a whole different ball of wax. And if you're Brian Dable, and this doesn't work out, even though you've worked with Brandon Beane before, you have to be keenly aware that it doesn't matter what your long-term relationship with that GM is, because he might throw you under the bus anyway.
Yeah, I kind of like it, but I don't think I like it as much as Brinson. A little bit iffy here. I just don't know how you look your fan base in the eyes if you're firing Sean McDermott, who made the playoffs in 8 of 9 seasons, who went 12-5 with a not so great roster, and you're going to bring in a head coach who just got fired for losing twice as many games as he won during his stint with the Giants. He went 20, 40, and 1. And no matter how you slice that, that is not good. And so what if Dable goes into Buffalo in his first year and only goes 9-8 or 10-7? Yes, that's a winning record, but it's a huge step back from what you were getting from McDermott. And so how long of a leash are you giving him? It just feels like a situation where maybe you need some new blood. That's not to say that Dable might not succeed. As Brinson said, Josh Allen knows him well. He spent 4 seasons with him, and he's very familiar with his offense. So that is an absolute plus. It just doesn't feel like it feels like it's something that could go south.
You know what it feels like, John Breach? And I know a lot of people throw barbs at your Cincinnati Bengals over the organizational mistrust and maybe things being out of line from time to time with the all-world quarterback. Seems a little Cincy in Buffalo right now. John Breach, Will Brinson, we always appreciate the time here on CBS Sports HQ. Josh Allen with Brian Dable. Remember, comes into the league, all-world arm talent, but had to refine it. Had to get on target and on task. He has been since. What would it look like with Daves and Allen reunited? You might.
HQ, good to be back with Joe Musso. I am Hakeem Dermish. Monster show on tap. Golf is so back. We're going to get to that. We got full highlights and reaction from the opening round of the American Express. We begin with the NFL, setting the scene for Championship Sunday, and we've got the latest on the coaching carousel.
That's right, Hakeem. It is more seats filled and microphones placed, because before you win a game, you better win the press conference. It's new fish in Magic City Thursday. Miami's new 2-man introduced to the media. Head coach Jeff Hafley and general manager John Eric Sullivan tasked with this overhaul and some serious financial constraints. The biggest decision surrounds the quarterback position and that hefty dead cap hit attached to a potential goodbye.
I have a lot of respect for Tua. He's a good football player. He's accomplished a lot in this league. I think whether it's Tua or anybody else, it's unfair and irresponsible for me to sit up here and talk about anything specific before I've talked to the player himself. Quarterback is the most important position in professional sports. I also think it's the most dependent. These guys heard me say this in the interview process. We will evaluate that position like we evaluate every other position, and we will do what is best for this football team. With Tua or anybody else, to sit up here today and tell you that I have a great understanding of what we're going to do or which way we're going to go, that would be a lie, because there's just too much work to do. There's too many conversations to be had at this point. A lot of respect for Tua, what he's accomplished in this league. I thought Quinn did a great job at the end of the season. We have to figure that out. We will, but today's not the day I can give you that answer. I understand the question. I just can't give you that answer today.
For more of the NFL minds of Will Brinson and John Breach are on the case, fellas, a Tua benching was really Coach McDaniel's last act in office. The new brass now is to make a similar decision, but they're really left to assess the goodbye and if it's worth $99 million in dead cap charges. John, when you hear the term evaluation at the center of those comments, what's left to evaluate other than those financials?
Well, if you're the new general manager walking in the door, you kind of got to look at what the old guys did. Why did they bench Tua? I'm sure they're going to watch every snap. They're going to watch all the film. And Mike McDaniel is an offensive mind. I'm sure they're probably going to come to the same conclusion. And when you're a guy like John Eric Sullivan, who is coming from Green Bay, where he has been for the past 21 years, where they went from Hall of Fame quarterback to future Hall of Fame quarterback in Aaron Rodgers to very impressive quarterback in Jordan Love. So they do know what it takes and how important it is to find that successful quarterback in an organization. And that really, you have to get that one right if you want to get everything else right, because that's going to put you on the right track. And obviously, he didn't hint either way which way he was going to go. But I think if Tua was staying, then you would come out and just point out all the good things about him and really hint that he's staying. That's not what happened here. He definitely left it up in the air. But if you are the Dolphins, you mentioned that dead cap hit, Joe. Hey, the Denver Broncos ripped the Band-Aid off with Russell Wilson's dead cap hit, which was the biggest one in NFL history at the time. They're one game away from the Super Bowl here just 24 months later. So that is the argument for doing it, and it will be interesting to see what they do at that position this offseason.
Yeah, I think the Broncos point is a great one, Breach, because like if you're any NFL owner is going to say, well, I mean, that team got jammed with this contract and they managed to draft a guy in the first round and get back to the Super Bowl. I also think the fact that this guy is from Green Bay matters a lot. He's been there since like 2007. He has seen a lot of turnover in Green Bay and he understands. He comes from the Ted Thompson mold, and Ted Thompson was constantly drafting quarterbacks. He didn't need Aaron Rodgers when he drafted him. He drafted him anyway. And then like one of his proteges didn't need Jordan Love. They drafted him anyway because you can never have too much like talent at the quarterback position. You can never know when you want to be ahead of moving on from the quarterback. And I do think that, look, they're going to probably, it's one of those things you don't want to commit too hard because you do have to figure out what ownership wants to do from a spending perspective, from a cap perspective, and all of those things before you make that decision. And you definitely don't make it at your opening press conference.
Russell Wilson, for those keeping track at home, still a $32 million item line on the Broncos cap sheet this season. As you said, they're playing on a championship Sunday. John Breach, we'll see if Miami can get it turned around in some short order, but it's about getting the talent and then the development of it. That's Jeff Hafley's job. The ascent has been parabolic since arriving at Boston College. He's back on the big whistle now. Here's a bit of his opening remarks on Thursday as well.
Like I told you guys, I'm gonna wear it on my sleeve at times. I'm gonna be passionate. I'm gonna tell you how I feel, and you're gonna get everything I have. And to the city, to the fans, this is a storied organization, one of the best in all sports, and you deserve a winner. You guys deserve a winner. And I am going to do everything in my power to bring you guys that. I am so proud to be here, and I cannot wait to get started. Thank you.
All right, so as Green Bay South takes form, it was the Green Bay defense that went south in the absence of Micah Parsons under the tutelage of Coach Hafley. What are your impressions, Will, of these first remarks, and maybe more importantly, what are your expectations for next season?
So I think this is one of those like underrated in terms of like just fascinating stories in recent coaching moves, Musso, because this guy he was the Ohio State defensive coordinator, leaves Ohio State and becomes the Boston College head coach, right? I mean, that's you take your head coaching job at a smaller ACC school. He read the tea leaves before the tea leaves got read for him, and he bounced out of there. He left a head coaching position with a Power 5 school to go be a defensive coordinator in the NFL, and it was one of the smartest moves anyone's done in coaching in the last 5 years because it has now landed him in short order a head coaching position in the NFL. So I think the way that he reset his stature amongst like up and coming, head coach candidates was brilliant. I think his defense was really good. Obviously, you lose Micah Parsons, that's a dagger. But I think he's good. I always liked Hafley before. I liked him until he got to BC, and then who wins at BC? Not many people. So I think it's a good hire. But he does have an uphill battle. One with the franchise, you have a very difficult division. Josh Allen and Drake Mayer there to stay, and then two, I think the Dolphins have been selling off some pieces in recent years on defense. So you have to go out and get some talent on that side of the ball. But I think as long as expectations are managed, and they should be, this is a really upside-filled head coaching hire.
Yeah, and when you have a press conference like this, and Musso, you mentioned winning the press conference at the top of the show, and for me, it's you don't even have to win the press conference. You just don't want to lose it. You don't want to pull an Adam Gase from a few years ago when every fan was jumping off before you've even played your first game. And what Halfley did, I really liked his comment. He said, hey, look, I'm going to do everything in my power to make this team a winner, to do that for the fans. And that's what you want. You want a coach that exudes confidence, but he's not going out there and guaranteeing a Super Bowl win in his first year because that would be ridiculous. But he is saying, hey, look, we're going to compete. Now, the fact of the matter is that if this team is going to win, Halfley's going to have to find an offensive coordinator, and that's going to be his biggest hire since he is a defensive-minded guy. But I think one thing that should give Miami Dolphins fans confidence is that if you look at Halfley's history, Brenton mentioned his time in college, head coach in Boston College, Ohio State, but before he did those two jobs, he was in San Francisco for 2 seasons with Kyle Shanahan, so he understands what a smart offensive mind looks like and what it takes to succeed in the NFL. And then we know he just spent 2 seasons with Matt LaFleur in Green Bay. So again, he understands what you need to win in the NFL on the offensive side of the ball. So I would feel pretty confident if I'm a
Between reunions, bets, and fresh starts, these franchises are grappling with the same dilemma. How much of the past is still worth carrying to try to succeed in the future? Whether it's Tyreek Hill in Kansas City, Dabo in Buffalo, or Tua in Miami, the NFL once again proves that off-field decisions weigh as heavily as any play on Sunday.